Thank you, Gillian, and very good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. I apologize for breaking up the buzz and all the excitement in the room. I could see that all of you were contributing to the discussions around the next great ideas of how we can build Singapore's future economy. But never mind, I know you've all captured this on this yellow piece of paper, and also at the end of this panel discussion, you also have a chance to ask some of our panelists, or even better still, at the very final session for today, you could ask some of the members of the CFE committee directly if you have some of these great ideas to share with them. It's my pleasure to chair today's panel discussion. As Gillian said, this is the last panel discussion that we have for today before the dialogue with members of the CFE committee. We do have three very distinguished speakers, panelists here today who will talk about the topic of responding together. This topic is about not just relying on the government to think about our future economy, but it's also a discussion around how the government could work together with corporations, with trade unions, and also with trade associations to build the future of Singapore's economy. And the way we're going to run this is I'm going to shortly introduce each of the panelists, invite them to speak for about 15 minutes each, and then we have half an hour left at the end of this session for Q&A and dialogue with each one of you. And at the time, you can keep some of your great ideas that you have penned down in this yellow sticker, and perhaps share some of those ideas or ask the panelists the questions. So let me start. For the past 50 years, the government has done a great job in building our economy to where it is today. The GLCs and also the MNCs have also played a significant role in not only providing capital, but also in training and development and building capacity for the nation. But in this fast-changing world where we rely on technology and innovation, there are more players now that could help to build the future of Singapore's economy. And certainly the startups and the SMEs do play a significant part as we move forward in engaging in this sharing economy. I actually like the example that SIT professor Lohan Tong talked about the mee pok man in equating mee pok to the Japanese ramen, and then giving the example of how the SMEs could be like the mee pok seller, and then taking the lead in building the Singapore's future economy. I thought that's very apt, because as we move forward, and when people talk about how businesses have been disrupted in this world of, everybody asks, when is your business going to be Uberized? It's a common question that we hear today. And this whole concept of sharing economy, the mobile workforce, and it's just going to change the way we do things. And I think change has become even more critical now in this economy. So I'm going to now invite each of my panelists to talk about how the three parties, the government, the trade associations, and the trade unions could work together to build Singapore's future economy. So I'm going to invite the first panelist, and that's Janet Ang. Janet is a Vice President in the Industry Solutions team with IBM Asia Pacific, covering Australia, New Zealand, India, ASEAN, and Korea. In her current role, she's responsible for leading IBM's industry value creation for its Asia Pacific clients. She also leads the team that help cities in Asia build smarter and cognitive cities, which is very relevant to this discussion around the future economy of Singapore. Janet was previously the Managing Director of IBM Singapore for two stints, and that was when I first met her. And in between that, she spent 2 periods working with IBM outside of Singapore, in Tokyo and Beijing. She graduated with a business administration honors degree from the National University of Singapore. So I met Janet earlier. I was asking her questions about IBM's business, cloud, and so on and so forth. And she reminded me that her capacity today as a panelist is to represent the government. Leave it to Janet to explain why that is the case.
Okay.
Janet.
All right, thank you. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I didn't choose, I was wondering, why is my time, why am I representing to talk about the role of the government? So I'll let Gillian do that. But I guess the key thing is, in a way, I'm always glad to have the microphone. I won't sing for you, but I will talk to you. All right, and I know it's late in the afternoon, so I'm going to be quick. All right, so key thing is I'm going to discuss some of the disruptions in technology, as well as how I see and perhaps represent how the industry might see the role of the government. I think that's why. So I am not government, all right? So in a way, if there are any government guys here, I'm only the messenger if you don't like it. And if you like it, yes, you can come pat me on the back. All right. So I cannot help but squeeze in a few charts to talk a little bit about MNCs. Because in the last 2 days, that if you sit there, you get a little bit of a feel that, maybe we should have a big shift in our strategy, and is relying on MNCs or having MNCs the right strategy. Well, I'm a product of MNC. I'm 39 forever. I'm a mother of 4. I'm truly Singaporean. I've worked 8 years in China, 3 years in Tokyo. Everything I've learned from IBM. All right, and therefore I have to, steal a little bit of this, because I truly believe that, hey, the role of government is not only just to listen to all of us and then just go do whatever we want to do, because then we might end up like Brexit. Okay, how come nobody laughs? Either this joke has been said too often that nobody laughs. All right, so just a quick recap. Our first 50 years, there are many other strategies, but one key anchor is global MNCs. And I don't have to say all of this, you can read it. And also, my good table mate, Dr. Nungzari, has already, done the honors of recapping our Singapore strategy of attracting MNCs and foreign capital. Important thing here I'd like us to note is future ready. We must dare to transform and have the ability to execute. That's our key strength. A lot of people can have the strategy, but strategy without execution is daydreaming. Execution without strategy is hallucination. All right, so why I've got 2 charts, not to weko you on IBM, but IBM is definitely very Singaporean. We are 64 years old, older than SG50, all right? And it goes beyond this chart, I did not update it. Also, another point, global footprint of many of our MNCs in Singapore. Again, you might not be able to read it, but if you read it, we are in tandem with the national agenda, provided the country has a national agenda, and we are very so fortunate in Singapore, we do. All right, and I'm just showing you these 2 charts because all of the other MNCs, you go and ask them, the successful ones who are very Singaporean probably will dish out similar 2 charts. So I just want to say that the MNC strategy is definitely a right strategy. All right, and if you think about it, the reason is we are too small. There was once upon a time, Singapore economy is smaller than most global corporations. All right, and therefore, how do you know what's going on out there? Key thing, follow the markets, follow where the MNCs are going, and our leaders always ask the question, how do we stay relevant to the MNCs and to the corporations around the world? And we should continue to do that. All right, and just to make sure that we are in present time as well, in fact, this is just June the 9th, all right, IBM has moved our Asia Pacific headquarters to Singapore from up north, Shanghai, and we are in MBFC, and on June 9th, we open our IBM Watson Center at Marina Bay. All right. Of course, the quote from DPM is also very relevant, but basically the key things that were discussed in the last 2 days as to whether technology is going to take away all jobs and we are all going to be twiddling our thumbs, I will beg to differ, provided we've got the right mindset, to build the skills and the knowledge. Now, talking about knowledge, hot off the press, last night, we just received this announcement, or shall we say, of course, I knew this was coming. IBM announced, to establish the first center for blockchain innovation in Singapore, in collaboration with MAS and EDB. You've heard this word blockchain going around. I will demystify it for you in a little while. But key point here is that the MNCs, if we are according to national agenda, aligned with national agenda, investment, skills, and execution still takes place, even as we speak. And you can go around to the other MNCs who are successful, probably they have the same thing. Now, so disruptive technologies, opportunities, or threat. All right, I guess this is a question that you will say, hey, the role of the government is to think about this, and absolutely they have. Because this week, in fact, is World City Summit. You all would have read all the papers. I hope that you all have read Straits Times, Business Times. All right, and you all have heard so much about all the disruptive technologies. I sat there and I said to myself, in the past, in any conference, probably if it comes to my turn, I will be one of the few that will try to talk technology, and everybody else will be talking something else. But in this conference, every session, we are talking technology. So guys, we like it or not, it is in our face. Whether we are the migrants or we are not the natives. Maybe the below 25 are the natives, but, we've got to embrace it. So we all heard about Internet of Things digitizing the world. But the key thing is new value creation. All right, we got to think of how to really leverage it to get the new value creation. And this morning you heard about the vast opportunities. I want to share with you two other technologies which perhaps we did not talk too much about. One is cognitive systems. All right, so basically cognitive systems, in February 14 of 2011, you might have heard the breaking news that the IBM Watson system beat the human champions in Jeopardy, in the game of Jeopardy. So those who know the game of Jeopardy, the question can be anything and the answers must be fast. All right, and the Watson computer beat the two world champions. How? Of course, it's not just massive speed. You've already been introduced to a couple of the terms in the last 2 days by the various professors and PhDs. That makes me very humbled to be standing up here. All right, key thing, machine learning. All right, some people call it artificial intelligence, but the whole idea of cognitive systems goes beyond that. All right, cognitive systems can understand the data, read the text, understand the natural language, reason and interpret with hypothesis and evidence-based probabilities, not exact science, give you the probabilities, and it can continually learn and relearn. That's what cognitive systems, and we are just at the brink of the start of this new era of cognitive systems. And only cognitive systems, IBM believes, and you can already see since we started, lots of other players have come into the play, and you always know something is in the right direction when plenty of people are going after it, is that about 88% of the data actually we don't see. And not speaking about the 88% of the data that we do not see, which we call dark, right? It could be images, it could be photographs. You can, even if there are systems that can read them, you read them in silos. You can only read the images on its own, or you can read the videos on its own, but you cannot integrate everything together. And that's what we are propagating, the possibility and the opportunities ahead of us if we develop such cognitive capabilities, all right? And the whole idea is not to take over human beings, all right? Human beings will still always be there, all right? Now, there are all the ethics issues which, we'll discuss, at a separate point. But let's take the point that, hey, we're all doing good. After all, you heard a lot of these 2 days about trust. Uber, Airbnb, all that will not take place if there is no trust. So in that positive light, hey, the humanity trust has at least come back. Because when Wall Street fell, a few years ago, the whole trust the trust is there. the whole idea is how can we enhance, scale, and accelerate human expertise? How would you like the MSK Sloan Kettering School Cancer Oncologist or school in the US, the best of the oncologists, to be available at your fingertips? Right? You cannot. Okay, the kind of expertise is there. So what happens, and I brought that up only because the minute we won Jeopardy, MSK approached IBM, and we worked on a system to capture the knowledge of breast cancer treatments, all right, and pathways for cancer, all right, into Watson. And in fact, that system is now being used on the cloud by doctors in one of the Thailand hospitals as well as in India. Now, we are not suggesting that, wow, the system will tell them exactly what is the cure. But just imagine the doctors who are using that system will up-level their expertise and understanding based on almost like a mentor, but with a system that is supported by the real experts. And I know there were discussions about don't believe the experts. So yeah, so if he's the expert, then maybe we don't believe him either. Hey guys, you guys are a little bit boring when I tell lousy jokes, or I haven't got your energy pumping. All right, another kind of capabilities. All right, we are in an aging population. We've got lots of engineers who are retiring and retiring fast. All right. In this last 50 years, all our expertise in maintenance, in oil rig design, in whatever, every area they can talk about. Where are we going to get this expert? Where are we going to capture it? I know this word called knowledge management has been around for decades, but it's just putting paper into paper and nobody ever reads them. And who can ever read all of that? So this is the kind of systems whereby Woodside in Australia has actually implemented something like this and already using it. So I got to run. I got to run along. Blockchain. World Economic Forum says that 10% of GDP, world GDP, will be stored on blockchain technology by the mid-2020s. All right, so what is blockchain? So that, because this is the other thing about our era. Our era, the tech is so in our face, none of us will dare ask what it is, because we are supposed to know. Google research, right? All right, so I will try to demystify for you. And the best way to see it is that multi-party business networks, enabling significant cost and risk reduction and innovative new business models. All right, and the whole idea is that you're going to be able to have a digitally signed encrypted transactions in a distributed ledger. So you trust one another, all right, party to party. And this definitely, if you think about it, trade financing is one use case. You think of it, supply chain logistics is another use case. And if you think about the entire, I didn't put the whole thing here, if you think of the entire trade cycle, every part goes to a different fella. And what happens today, of course, lots of paper and lots of time, and lots of disputes in between. So can Singapore, take this and run? Of course, I think you can see from the announcement that we just had with EDB and MAS yesterday that we certainly see it, and you will also see that PSA CEO is also exploring and collaborating with us. All right, so in a nutshell, all the stuff that we talked about, whether it's security, cryptology, shared ledger, consensus, smart contracts, all that there. So we talked about shared economy, and we talked about, I would like to introduce another word, the insights economy, all right? Such that we are really a powerhouse of data. All the largest of MNCs in every conceivable industry, EDB has attracted here, has got data here. All the big banks, all of them are my clients, all their data centers and their data is here. All right, how can we help them unleash the value of the 88% unlocked plus the 90% that's actually not used, even if the data can be seen? How can we help all the industries to create the insights? And I think you know what I mean, all right? So the other thing I want to talk about is that we talk about Uber and Airbnb. In all honesty, okay, with the exception that, hey, yes, the internet highway definitely has given it a possible ability to execute. The real change is business models. All right, Uber and Airbnb are business models. All right, could ComfortDelGro have done it? Actually can. We actually did GPS and with all the dispatching in the early 90s, right? And that's why ComfortDelGro was one of the early Friends of IT award given by Singapore Computer Society, right? So basically, it's change in new business models, and this is not easy. We talked about taking less cars. If you think about really new business models, how about car to go? All right, that you don't even have to have so many cars because you can actually go to the cars and get it. I'm only just going to run through. And another one, I mean, there are plenty of smarter city ideas, but I just put one on Madrid, whereby the whole idea was also discussed yesterday by our construction friend. All right, whereby I talked about, procurement process, etc. Well, one of the key things is, do we measure KPIs or do we measure real outcomes? All right, do we measure KPIs or real outcomes? I think we've got to really, the government does definitely play a role, taking a lead. And in this particular case, instead of paying the vendor by the number of times or the number of garbage bins that they throw, is also by the quality and etc. Okay, so no time to tell you the long story. So if you don't mind, I'm going to just wrap up with a couple of charts on where I see Singapore's next 50 years. All right, so I will say lead in staying relevant to global MNCs and Singapore MNCs. The red are in color. Red means I've added it to what I saw in the first 50 years. Continue to create the positive business climate, develop the capabilities and talents and all that we are doing a great job of. Skills Future, you heard this morning. Then the other part is accelerate the build of the ecosystem. I personally feel that probably our ecosystem conversation needs to go deeper, and later we'll hear from our association friends. But I will also submit to you that many businesses are redefining boundaries. Banks doing other people's job, telcos doing banks' job, somebody else doing somebody else's job. So the redefining of boundaries is happening, and therefore ecosystems is in fact identified in a IBM business value study, one of the top number one things that needs to be done. Innovate early and fail fast. To be honest, I don't quite subscribe to the, what was it again? The second comer thing. All right, the second mover thing. I think I understand what he was saying, because in fact that builds on what Singapore has always done. That means the technologies other people come up with first. Maybe other people might even try something first, but never wait to be the second mover. While they are still trying, if you see it, that's what leadership is all about. You see it, you got to jump on it, and you got to take the lead to make it happen. And nothing is a complete success all the time, but fail fast, and then continue to connect. And I guess I did not add the triangle, the corridor thingy that Dr. Nasuga said just now. All right, vision, smart nation, we all know. Cybersecurity, trusted brand. I'll add agile policies. All right, maybe the government needs to work on these agile policies. Now, can we blame them? They cannot be so agile. The machinery is huge. That's why I submit to you, we've got to again implement new technologies and new solutions like cognitive, to whatever extent, to actually help people, or help us be able to get to the kind of agile capabilities. Invest in human capital, skills future, but also not forgetting to be an inclusive society, leaving nobody behind. Supporting industry to transform, I think we've got that. Creating agile startup culture, even within our organization. IBM ourselves, we are now working with a lot of startups, and in Singapore, we have actually 12 of them around the world, digital.nyc, digital.london, whatever, and in Singapore, we have Tech SG with the National University of Singapore. Invest in capital insights, scale expertise. So imagine Singapore a cognitive city, all right? And I guess this last page, a lot of people have talked about it. You all can read it. I said some of it already. Probably, based on my experience working in China, because I was the vice chair for Singcham China, one thing is you will see the Hong Kong people, the Hong Kong companies, they may fight back home, but when they get there together, they are they hunt in a pack. All right, I think Singapore companies, we could do a lot better, even between MNCs and SMEs. All right, key word here also, you want to be a maker, you want to be a builder, you have to build design capability. All right, my friends in manufacturing tell me that's one of the things that we are missing. We don't have the design capability, and therefore, we can't go upstream. And talking about manufacturing, even though we have a smart nation vision, perhaps for manufacturing in specific, okay, we got to know that there is a made in India by Modi. We've got Korea's don't know what, so something manufacturing innovation 3.0. We got Germany's industry 4.0, and Philippines and Thailand are definitely working on, and communicating their vision for manufacturing. So what does Singapore want to do as far as being that advanced manufacturing hub rather than just the words? Perhaps, this is one of the big areas to talk about. Speed over perfection is really critical. And for the government, my field is facilitator, curator, orchestrator, or are you going to be an integrator and doer? All right, so if you're going to integrate everything, you're going to do everything, then even more so, the SMEs will feel like they are being left out. And even the MNCs are going to feel disenfranchised after they've invested their capability. So how? This part, no clear answer is, we've got to really go sort that out. And I guess last but not least, balance between cost, proven capability, and local skills build up. All right, local capacity. Maybe our eyes did leave the ball a little bit across the board. And with that, I think our government has done an outstanding job. And I tell you why, because all the cities I visit all want to see me because they all want to hear and learn the Singapore story. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. What a power-packed presentation before. It's going to be difficult for me to sort of follow through. I'm going to talk about a very dry subject of associations. But I think all of you perhaps understand that an association or chambers or TACs, as we refer to them, basically represent different sectors of business and industry. And they each, I think, have different roles to play. And, when I said yes to Gillian to come address you, I should have read the fine print, because who am I to actually tell you what's the role of an association? Now, what I plan to do this afternoon is maybe just share a little bit about what the association that I chair is doing, how we keep ourselves relevant, and how we help our members, grow around the region. But I think as far as Janet's question is the government a curator, orchestrator, integrator, etc.? And as far as I'm concerned, the government to us is really Spring. Spring has helped us a great deal as an association to build up capacity and capabilities within the association. And I think the strategy of focusing on associations and chambers and getting these organizations, who are multipliers, to help their members. I don't think the government can go out and help hundreds and thousands of companies that are in Singapore. But if you sort of group them in the areas that they specialize in, within the particular business sector or an industry sector, I think it's a lot easier, because in my organization, which is in sustainable energy, we understand exactly what our companies do, how to help them, and how to actually bring them out. So what I'm going to do this afternoon, within the next 12 minutes, is to maybe share a little bit about what SEAS does, C stands for the Sustainable Energy Association of Singapore. We have 200 over members, 220 to be exact. We will launch on the 12th of July. That was the day in 2006 when Singapore finally decided to sign the Kyoto Protocol. And it was launched by our Minister, Dr. Yaacob Ibrahim, together with Dr. Amy Khor, who was then PALSEC and a colleague of mine in Parliament. Today, she's come back to Muir, and she's a senior Minister of State, and she has become our patron again. So really, as far as the association is concerned, we've actually gone through 10 years. And I would say that in this 10 years, without the support of Spring, we would not be where we are today. And I'm saying this very frankly, because associations will struggle. If you just depend on membership fees and don't have a business model to sustain yourself, you'll die very quickly. So just let me share with you what we do. 3 focus areas that we have: market development, enterprise development, training. And this is what we do actually for our members. Training is a very big part. It's basically a cash cow for the organization that keeps us sustained. We, together with the government of Singapore, we work very closely with EDB and Spring. We want to develop Singapore in a regional hub, energy hub. And I think if you all basically understand climate change, you understand how important renewables, clean energy, and energy efficiency is. And I think we see the big opportunity around the region. Figures are given there. And we like to develop Singapore into a center for at least Southeast Asia. I think what's next, the points are given there. We need to stay competitive, and that is our members. They need to remain relevant in terms of the business they're in. So if the technology that they have is not quite right, we run conferences and seminars annually. The first one happened 3 years ago. We're running our 4th edition this year in October during the Energy Week. And we introduce them to other technologies to help them make themselves relevant. The thing is, how do we continue growing? One problem with associations is every member you get, you could be losing 1 or 2 members. You can't help everybody, but we're trying to be as helpful as we can to everybody. And the most important thing with any organization is sustainability, and therefore you have to be financially sound. That means, you have to run the association like a business. So the role that we play basically is to support the business of our members. Now, we run missions out to the region. We work with IE Singapore to understand what different markets in the region require in terms of technology. And then we will actually bring missions out to the region. Development of knowledge, capacity building, I've mentioned before, not only for the organization, but also for our members, because they need to know how to successfully run their own operation and their organization, and how to actually market themselves. We do thought leadership. For example, we write white papers. Before our white paper out to the government, we had problems with getting solar systems out on our roofs. Back 3 years ago, Singapore had 1 megawatt. Okay, we are actually one of the better R&D centers in solar PV around the world. and we have 1 megawatt to show. We wrote a white paper. I spoke to Minister Iswaran, and it is 4 months later during COS, he announced Solar Nova, which then committed the government to support this whole PV thing, solar PV with 350 megawatts. So thought leadership is important. Minister thought that solar PV was not viable until we wrote the paper to show him that it was extremely viable, so much so that, the people who are leasing solar panels, could give a discount over what they have to pay, from the grid. So, business development, as I mentioned before, is important. So we actually do missions out. We invite missions in because that invites technology to come into Singapore. And to build ourselves actually as a center, you need to have critical mass. Nobody is going to take Singapore as a center of clean energy if you do not have enough clean energy companies here, providing solutions that can solve the problems that the region requires. So we actually invite and try and attract a lot of different organizations like ourselves to bring their members out so that we have business-to-business meetings. And this is the type of missions that we run towards the region, and the business that is basically turning over and generated from sales is indicated here. We also believe in the future. So the companies that we have now to sustain ourselves, we have to incubate and start new companies in Singapore. And we have actually a business incubator accelerator, accelerated companies that actually have technologies globally, want to use Singapore as a base to basically promote themselves around Asia. And we provide them basically this accelerator to come in. We provide them with support of understanding the market. We introduce them to our local companies that could act as partners to them, because marketing around the region is not an easy thing. So it's easier for them if they could work with local companies and then help them go out. So we've actually done this and also worked with organizations like IES to actually incubate new ideas within the organization. Training is a big thing. We actually provide a fair amount of this. One, I think, notable thing that we do that probably other associations could probably learn from. We've developed a good relationship with a multilateral, the Asian Development Bank, and they realize our strength in terms of training government officials from different countries. We've worked quite closely with MFA, training a number of these officials. Today, together with the ADB, we've actually started a Center of Excellence, Sustainable Energy Center of Excellence, or SECO, and we've actually trained over 200 policymakers. Now, ADB wanted to ensure that the 46 developing member countries that they deal with are all on the same page. What we have done is ADB would actually invite these policymakers, and we have people from all around in Central Asia, Central West Asia, out of India, etc., even in ASEAN, being invited in to our workshops where we actually teach and build capacity on understanding what renewable energy is, what the technology does, the policies that they have to actually put in place so that their country becomes attractive for example, our companies to go and invest together with an investor and actually perhaps, for example, solar systems, to put a solar farm there, so that policies would be attractive to pay tariffs for these companies to actually go out and to understand the legal requirements there for various things for them to actually set up. So these are things that we actually do now. Training these policymakers means we have access to these countries. So I think you know within Central Asia, there are all the TANs there, Kazakhstan, Afghanistan, etc. Now these people come in. This is a difficult market. But when we get to know these people, we actually form an alumni of all the people that actually come in, and we keep in touch with them, and we try to lead missions out there. So this, again, training program, we've trained over 7,000 professionals locally in Singapore, delivered over 200 training programs. I mentioned about thought leadership. We're doing another one on e-mobility. And this actually will be looking at bringing e-vehicles and autonomous vehicles into Singapore. This was the press launch. This is the energy summit that we run every year. It's a conference and an exhibition. Basically, it provides a platform for ASEAN buyers to come into Singapore to look at the technologies that we provide. Also provides thought leadership. So we actually invite some of the thought leaders from all around the world to come actually share with us what is the latest ahead, because we realize technology, even in the renewable sector, is changing and changing quite rapidly. And at the end of it, I said, the association has to remain sustainable financially. And we do this by running training courses, conferences, and seminars. So I'm finished 16 seconds before time. Thank you.
Very good afternoon to all of you. I'm so glad to see so many of you and many familiar faces. I'm so glad to be the final presentation for this two-day conference. And just in case you're wondering why a trade unionist is speaking to you and presenting as the last presenter of this two-day conference, like they always say, the government has the first say, the employers have the second say, the union has the final say. And I have a caveat because while all of you were enjoying your lunch earlier today, I spent 1.5 hours on the dentist chair at the emergency department in National Dental Center because I woke up this morning and all my teeth were painful and I had 6 sharp needles being inserted, and I'm still on local anesthetic and I still feel it now. Yeah. But on the dentist chair, I was thinking about this afternoon's presentation, and I had 2 takeaways for all of you. First thing, whether it's about future economy, future workforce, future jobs, please go to the root of the problem. My root of the problem is that I had not a perfect brushing habit. In case, for a gentle piece of advice, don't brush your teeth, don't brush your gums, brush the crevice between your teeth and the gums. Yeah. The other takeaway was that I realized that actually, if you look at future jobs, high-touch industries will be industries to stay for the future, not just today, tomorrow, but next 10, 20 years. So high-touch industries like healthcare, because you can't use a robot to examine and really dig up everything. I shall not go to the details, but all the calculus and everything in between the crevices. Yeah. But before I start my presentation and share about the unusual labor movement, I don't want to use the word unions because we have morphed and really moved ahead with many of our different initiatives to share about the unusual labor movement. Maybe can I have a show of hands from the audience, get some audience participation? How many of you here have not heard of unions being in existence in Singapore? Can I have a show of hands? Not too bad. Everyone knows we exist. Yeah, I asked this question because just last week, in a group of TPP officials from the United States Department of Trade as well as Labor came to visit our tripartite partners, the government, the employers, and I had an audience with them for 1 hour to share with them what unions and the labor movement have been doing for the past many years, because they're a bit concerned, about the freedom of association in Singapore and whether unions do operate in Singapore. So I had a good time of sharing with them the strikes that we have, the discussions behind closed doors, the banging of tables, as well as many of the cases that I personally represented in industrial arbitration court in the past 4 or 5 years. And they were suitably impressed. And my latest update yesterday was that they are quite impressed with tripartism in Singapore. So well done to Singapore. And I realized also my presentation this afternoon, after looking at the entire deck of slides from all of you in the past 2 days, in fact, my first part of my presentation would be a summary of actually all the various presentations in the past 2 days, basically looking at the issues and challenges that we face. I think it's the same, whether it's economy, whether it's associations, whether it's employers, in fact, workers and unions, we face the same challenges that all of you face. And that's the first part of it. The second part of my presentation will be to sell a bit of Khew. Yeah, and also to bring all of you up to speed on why we call ourselves the unusual labour movement. As you know, I think I wouldn't have to go into details. There are many global trends, from what Janet shared earlier on disruptive technology and the changing nature of work, which you have heard this morning. I think that's one exciting thing. We have just flashed here some of the future job survey, which the World Economic Forum has done earlier part of this year. Some of the exciting changes, and and it's gone beyond cyclical forces. It's gone beyond cyclical forces. We all know there's economic peaks and troughs, but increasingly today our challenge is not just cyclical forces, but also structural challenges that we have. So if you look at it, disruptive technology is here to stay, and I think we have to embrace the change before the change embraces us. And if you look at the skills of the future, it's going to morph quite a bit. In fact, if you look at today, if I may draw reference to the WEF report in February this year, I think they did a snapshot of what the skills that are required in 2020. In case you're not aware, the top 3 are actually complex problem solving, creativity, and critical thinking. But I want to add 2 more. Why? Because the labour movement actually did a survey a year ago among 1,000 professionals, managers, and executives from entry level to C-suite. And guess what? The top 2 skills that they feel will make them stay relevant, it's communication and IT. And guess what? It's the IT folks that say they need IT, yeah, to stay relevant. So I think it's really how we can ensure our workforce and as well as the labour movement stay relevant, to embrace and to not just stay relevant but also stay ready and resilient, because things are happening in this VUCA world. And there are a few challenging forces. Of course, we know employment growth in Singapore is fairly stunted. More people are leaving the workforce. The baby boomers are going to leave the workforce, and the new entrants are also shrinking. So that's one big challenge. And not just right jobs or right skills, but now we are trying to draw all 3 together. The jobs, the skills, as well as to harness the passion of the young and the workforce. I think that's the most difficult task that we have. Not just creating the jobs, facilitating the pickup of skills, but also bringing all 3 things, the skills, the jobs, as well as the passion together. I think that's one big challenge that we have. And if we know, the entire economy, not just regional, international, but also in Singapore, it's restructuring itself, it's transforming itself. And this has also by itself brings significant challenges to us. You look at banks these days, they look more like IT companies than banks. Yeah, gone are the days you go to the bank and then you see a row of tellers, bank tellers. Now you visit a bank, you either see the automatic ATM machine or a passbook updater or somewhere to drop your check in. So it's really changing, and you need the workforce need to pick up the new skills, to meet the future challenges. And mind you, of course, this stats extracted, we have 0.8 in terms of percent productivity growth in the last 10 years. But if you actually do a double click into it, the last 5 years, we are almost relatively flat in productivity. I think we talked about it in the conference proper. But this is one big challenge, I feel. Again, an aging workforce. It's coming in our faces. Japan is facing it today. We have pick up quite a few tricks and best practices from them. But I think that's one thing that will confront us. And not just workers, and not just the government has to adapt and grow, but as well as employers will have to change mental models and mindsets to redesign jobs, because the aging workforce is here to stay. And beyond government, employers and workforce, actually society has played an important part to be more accepting and willing to embrace this change in our demographic profile. And of course, with an aging population, with slower employment growth, employment rate and the growth of the workforce, there's also a growing number of white-collar workers. I call them the PMEs, the professionals, managers, executives. As we are talking today, our workforce comprises resident workforce, around about 34% who are PMEs. And if you add the PMETs, the technicians, it's about 54%. So that's a growing chunk, and it's growing exponentially as we are speaking. So this by itself plays challenges, not just on the economy, the kind of jobs, employers, as well as the union and the labor movement as well. How can we better serve them? I think that's the order of the day. And we also see layoffs, for example, in 2015, of all the 15,580 that were laid off, 71% were PMETs. So that's a serious thing. If you look at the downturns from Asian financial crisis in 98, the SARS 2003 to the 2008 subprime, this has been creeping up very, very, very steadily. And increasingly, we see our workforce profile changing rapidly as well. In case you're wondering what FSE stands for, it's called freelance and self-employed. And mind you, we have about 170,000 of these, minus the taxi drivers, but we have 170,000 of these freelance and self-employed workers in our workforce today. And with the wave of technology and with Uber, the shared economy and everything else, you will see this creeping up steadily. And how can we better serve? Because for freelance and self-employed workers, they are not like a traditional employer-employee relationship. How can the union and the labor movement be relevant to them? I think that's the biggest obstacle that we have. So how are we transforming ourselves? A few ways. Of course, the continuing role is to ensure that Singapore stays competitive. I think the key message is we are here not to go into an acrimonious or adversarial situation to find how to divide the cake and who gets the extra crumbs, but how to grow the cake bigger so that everybody gets a bigger slice altogether. I think that's key. And how to ensure the workforce and the labor movement can partner, our tripartite partners, to ensure we stay ready, relevant, and resilient. And we have, this is our strategy map. Very simply, it's care, fair, and grow. How we can better care for workers, in particular the different kind of workers that we have. The younger, the aging, matured workforce, as well as the freelance, self-employed workers. So, and then as well as the PMEs, and how we can, ensure that they are fairly treated at workplaces, and also ensuring that they grow as well, grow with the job so that they get better pay, better jobs, and at the end of the day, get a better life. And that's a picture of our lift lobby in the NTUC Centre at 8th floor. It's basically a map of all the 60 unions that we have in Singapore. We have 60 affiliated unions in Singapore, and they represent various industries. I think NTUC stands for National Trades Union Congress. I think this is the union bit of it, our bread and butter, our traditional. And some of you have worked with us very closely. I see many employers here. But the other engine that we're looking at is now the PMEs. How can we be better relevant to this growing populace? 34% today, 54% if you include the Ts. But I expect it to grow to at least about 2/3 of our workforce by 2030. So I think that's an exciting area. It's a blue ocean. We have traditionally been very strong with the blue-collar workers, but this is one area which we need to really embrace to stay relevant, and also to bring them usher in within this tripartite framework in Singapore. So we have set up PME centers and done a series of things to ensure that their interests and welfare are looked after. And if you can see just a snapshot of how the unusual labor movement has tried to be by your side, through training, through our Employment and Employability Institute, through our OTC Labour Leadership Institute. Recently, we just partnered Nanyang Technological University in rolling out some of the programs under Skills Future as well to help workers grow. The U Associate program, of which my panel members and quite a number of you here have been our partners. I think the key thing about U Associate program is how the union, the labor movement in NTUC, besides forging ahead with the unions, and really gaining ground in that sense. But the other aspect of it, the trades, besides the unions, is the trades. How we can partner with professional associations, guilds, and we have started a whole host of partnership with various professions to ensure that workers and working population in those areas grow. And of course, freelance and self-employed workers. And also we have started to work with SMEs because, 70% of the companies in Singapore are SMEs. So we see that they are highly relevant. And I'm glad basically the committee is looking seriously into SMEs. And then that's one area we also want to have a hand in to help them grow and so that the workers can be better looked after. And these are the professional networks that we have under the U Associate Program. We have 35 of them, from the legal profession to the accountancy profession to the engineers, to real estate and to the financial professionals, a whole host of them. In fact, just last week, we just inked a partnership with the Singapore Psychological Society, a group of psychologists. So exciting times ahead, and this is what will be in our agenda for the next 5-10 years. So why do we transform? And I think essentially is to ensure that we are able to stay relevant to the growing diverse needs of our population and the workforce. I think that's key. And we want to ensure that they have good jobs, not just good jobs, but they get better and better year after year, and also get better pay year after year, and also get a better life at the end of it. And if you look at it, we want to anchor our partnerships with all the industries, employers, to ensure we have a strong tripartite relationship and to maintain our competitive edge for Singapore. And at the end of the day, the buzzword is we want to be inclusive. That's why we are looking at not just the traditional rank and file workers, low-wage workers, but also the PMEs, the freelance self-employed workers, and also the professional guilds that are playing a very significant role, just like Edwin's association. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick. We are running a little bit behind time, but we do have some 10 minutes for question and answers with the audience. So are there any questions for what's been discussed during this segment for any one of the panelists? Questions? So Gillian first and then at the back. Yep.
Yes, I thought I'd better respond. Yeah, indeed, we asked Janet to come here to share with us, what is the industry's point of view about the role of government, especially in an industry that she's in, highly evolving and really taking us to the frontiers of new growth and new development. So with that, Janet, no cop-out, please. Yeah. You ask us, do you think the government should be a facilitator, curator, orchestrator, integrator? Let's take a step back, knowing you and your friends as in other people in your industry. What are some of the key messages you'd like to issue out to the government about its future role in order to enable the kind of developments you were talking about, right? Clearly, there are investments you're making, but you've got to also sense that the regulatory environment will facilitate that, bearing in mind that, of course, the government represents public interest. So Professor Yeo spoke this afternoon and said, can we have sort of a permission-free innovation in this area, right? So is that possible? And do you see that the government can make it? Or what are some things that you'd like it to think about? Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, Gillian drives a hard bargain. Okay, right, so key thing is, obviously, I subscribe that the role of the government, and the government has been doing a very good job in being a facilitator, can do more curation, more as a curator, more as a orchestrator. Why? Because that's why I asked about outcomes or KPIs, right? So that can be a long conversation. But I totally agree with Dr. Francis that, one thing must loosen up is how to create platforms to enable more participation. So I know I did not have a chance to talk about it, but like this center, innovation center that we just talked about for blockchain, it is not like EDB, MAS, and IBM we kaki do ourselves. It's not. It is to create that platform to enable academia, industry, SMEs, and especially even especially for the SMEs to come on board, because otherwise, individually, none of them may be able to actually go get it done. All right, but collectively, then if you stretch it a little bit further, associations, all right, say for example, Singapore Manufacturing Association or the logistics guys, all right, how can, we work together point to point with a multiplier effect to actually make those platforms that many of you all have talked about in these 2 days happen, but constructively. So government does not need to come and say, I will go exactly curate every part, but for this kind of a case, some of it need a little bit of a push. So having MAS participate with all the banks and financial services, I think lends it authenticity as well as credibility. And having that platform, hopefully also with other support that is already announced in the budget, that we can encourage organizations to really go execute. So I think that's one of the key roles that government should play, and then lighten up on certain things, right? Maybe I had a good way of saying the not so good things without saying it. That's why you thought that I didn't say anything, right? I guess the main thing is, don't try to do everything as well, all right? Because for the government, speed is of the essence, but sometimes we may have to make other people do it. So for example, research and development, I think we are on the right direction, right? That now the government is beginning to have cooperations with our large local GLCs, maybe should also do with some SMEs or the medium-sized companies, all right, to unveil or unlock the value of all the A-star research and NUS and all the universities' capabilities with the industry, right? Can we do a better job? I think definitely, but that is already in the right direction. Then from an MNC perspective, I also said it, I thought I said it quite clearly, right? If government and Singapore, everybody wants to do in Singapore and by Singaporeans and by Singapore companies, then what is the message that you're telling all the MNCs? I can tell you, the thing is everybody else is following Singapore's strategy. So do not go away from a successful strategy that we have had, all right? We are Singapore Inc., all right? Other people are now creating their EDBs and they copy all the things that Singapore has done well. And then don't tell me we are going to go backwards and say, no, now we're going to do everything ourselves. So I gave you all the MNC story is to tell you that there are MNCs that are very Singaporean, all right? So how to harness what we have done well and bring it to the future. And if we take it from a big picture, that means play a bigger game. Frankly speaking, I think it's a half cup full and not a half cup empty.
Yes, certainly, Janet. I was very interested with the blockchain center that you talked about, because I think that will change the way trade documentation get done and so on, with blockchain technology and so on. And hearing the earlier discussion around TPP, and if that gets through with increased trade amongst countries, I think this whole blockchain technology will help with trade documentation. My colleagues from, in my other capacity, I'm chairman of the Singapore International Chamber of Commerce, and my Victor Mills, who is there sitting in the audience, and he can tell you all about the amount of work, the manual work that's been done today to sort of deal with all the trade documentation just to get things done. I think with blockchain that will certainly change a lot.
Right.
We do have a question at the back there.
Khew from the LKY School. We hear a lot about creativity this morning, about creativity must come from the bottom, the importance of learning, unlearning, relearning. Not much has been mentioned, at least for today, about the role of the foreign workforce in Singapore. We have 1 million of foreign workers who are the lowest skilled or unskilled in Singapore. And this is, we know that the foreign workforce is going to be a permanent feature of the Singapore workforce going 20 years into the future or even 30 years down the road. You also mentioned, Mr. Patrick Tay mentioned the importance of looking at the root of the problem and dealing with the crevices in the dark places and so on. Now, I just want to understand, just a question to Mr. Patrick Tay, is how is the unusual labor movement in Singapore dealing with the foreign workers, in meaning that how is the labor movement relevant to the foreign workforce, especially the lower skilled, unskilled, lower workforce, in championing the training of the foreign workers? We know that the loss of subsidy given to the local workforce in terms of the by WDA, but what is being done about the upskilling of the skills of the foreign workforce in Singapore, and what should the government do? For example, I mean, the progressive wage model. We know that the basic wage is not applicable to the foreign workers. Should the labor movement be championing this in terms of advocating for minimum wages for the foreign workforce as well? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the question. I think it's a very good question because if you look at our Singapore workforce, 1/3 are actually foreign manpower, 2/3 local, 1/3 foreign. And I think as a policy, the government has maintained this and been trying very hard to maintain this. I think this will likely be the order of the day, the 1/3, 2/3 proportion. But I think increasingly in the past couple of years, you are also aware that there are a series of measures being rolled out to tighten this foreign workforce and to embrace a lean manpower. I think Minister of Manpower, Minister Lim Swee Say, has mentioned that publicly on many occasions on this need to embrace a lean manpower across all our industries. So if you look at the strategies as well as the direction moving ahead, we'll try to keep the foreign workforce as small as possible, where possible, and the position now is still 1/3, 2/3. If you're asking about the role of unions and how the labour movement has been representing the foreign workforce, maybe at two levels. Of course, those that are unionized. I've been involved with the shipbuilding and marine engineering, the healthcare sector, as well as the private security sector with the unions. And the unions do actually represent the foreign workers as well. So in the collective bargaining, in the collective agreements, they are also within the scope and ambit of our wage negotiations. So whatever, for example, like the healthcare sector, including the public healthcare sector, you see quite a number of foreign workforce or foreign manpower in the healthcare sector to supplement the local workforce. And they do draw the similar wages. I mean, we negotiate bonuses and increments. They draw exactly the same salaries. So that's at the unionized level. Of course, there's the remainder 75% which are in the non-unionized sector. That's where the tripartite partners have felt that we need to take a concerted step to help them, particularly the lower skilled, lower wage ones. So we set up the Migrant Worker Centre a couple of years back. In case you're not aware, we have a Migrant Worker Centre. It's a tripartite initiative to serve the needs of foreign workers. For example, if they enter the wage disputes or they are not paid salaries or they get injured in the workplace, they can actually seek help from this centre. And the staff of the Migrant Worker Centre are my colleagues from the labour movement. And finally, a question on how we encourage them from being lower skilled to more better skilled. I think that's one direction which not just the labour movement but also the tripartite partners, in particular Ministry of Manpower, has been doing in its outreach to particularly the SMEs and also quite a number of the MNCs as well, is to how to ensure that we bring in people at, not just for the headcount sake, but to ensure that we have a skilled workforce. So I think they do in the manpower policies through the work pass provisions and the issuance of work pass, ensure that the people that come in are to fill the gaps, work that we need, where we need foreign manpower to fill those gaps, including not just at the blue collar level, but also at the white collar level. Yeah.
Patrick, I do have a follow-up question on that, perhaps not so much around foreign workers, but is kind of linked to skills future and skills development. I can't help but to notice that when we go overseas, you go to Hong Kong, you have construction workers who are Hong Kong nationals and they are proud of the skills that they have as a construction worker. You go to Japan, the sushi chef is a profession that they're proud of. the taxi drivers put on a cap, wears a suit, puts on white gloves to drive the taxi, and they feel proud of the job. How is it that in Singapore we can't, I mean, what are we doing to try to instill that sort of pride in the skills that they're doing, you know, like the plumbers, the electricians, and so on and so forth? What are the unions doing, or what is the government doing towards encouraging that?
Yeah, as the gentleman earlier shared about the progressive wage model, I think that's one area which we have identified some of these lower wage sectors, in particular cleaning, private security, as well as landscaping, but also other sectors. I think we're doing it for many sectors. But Charlie, you're right. I was deeply involved in the private security sector in its upgrading and job recreation, you know, from 2004 to 2011, and we have made some strides in that. If you notice, for the private security sector, for example, they used to earn very low wages, and really, you know, the image of private security officers were actually quite low. So as a tripartite initiative, we set up a tripartite committee, then called in 2004 called the Security Industry Forum, but today now called the Tripartite Committee, looking at the private security sector. So sector by sector, we are doing this, setting up tripartite committees. I think some of you here are actually members of those committees. We have 25 different clusters, part of Skills Future blueprint as well, to look at sector by sector, what we can do to raise the image and professionalism through skills, through careers, through wages, and through the kind of jobs that they do. Embracing technology, embracing robotization, digitization, as well as, and really, and also the freelance and self-employed, because Charlie mentioned about plumbers and some of these freelance positions. You're right. If you look at as nearby as Australia, they are actually very well paid for their services. So it's I think it's a journey, and that's why we have Skills Future that's rolled out last year, and also this committee to look at how we can better professionalize many of these jobs, which are actually meaningful jobs, and also changing mindsets of society on how we perceive these jobs and how we treat the people working in those jobs.
Okay, we do have time for maybe one or two questions, but before I ask that, could I just give the heads up to my panelists? I will finish off the session by asking each one of you to make one or two statements, not more than 30 seconds, about how each of your organization can play a role in working together to build the future of Singapore. Any further questions on the floor? Yep, thank you.
Follow up to the foreign workers issue. I brought this issue up to the Minister of Manpower, Mr. Lim, mentioning to him we are using numbers to calculate on our number of foreign workers, but the value, the skill level, you know, we got so much money for Singaporean and PR, and my company, I run out of Singaporean and PR to train. I got a lot of foreign workers, but I don't train them because I have to pay 100% of it. So the issue goes up to them and says, why don't we use things like the levy and things like this as part of it? But issues boils down to political. The voice of the people are now stronger than the voice of SMEs. So as a result, it says you can't. You got to think of ways to adjust your left pocket to your right pocket and use your right pocket money to train your foreign workers. And it is very prominent, I think, in a business sense. For me, I'm in a furniture, and I am the president of the Singapore Furniture Industry Council. With regards to the Skills Future training, the issue on the professionalism of our plumbers and all, I think all of us in this room hire contractors, renovators, and carpenters to renovate your house. And every time a carpenter go to your house, you are frightened of them because you never know what they will do. The month before, they may be in their country farming. So me as an industry, we have the institute. We have the capabilities. We want people to come in, or we want our citizens or our PRs to be trained well enough. So we come up with programs like certification. We try very hard to push certification out to the field so that, you know, the value of the people into the profession gets more pay and all. We would like again, the foreign workers to come in to be able to train in the platform of the industry. And then when they go out to the field, all of us has a confidence and says that somebody comes to my house, a plumber is a profession, an electrician is a profession, a carpenter is a profession. Today, it's not that. A plumber comes to you and says, are you sure you know what to do? So until our mindset change and until the professionalism of each and everybody that goes to your house changes, then we will have the stage where the Australian comes in. You want to talk to me? 200 Aussie dollars. Just to shake hands with me. And it's today in Singapore, if you want to repair a Samsung TV, it's $200, by the way. Last month I did it. It's not cheap anymore, but the professionalism is still not there. Thank you.
So,
I don't want to add to time, but Patrick, can you just clarify, are foreign workers folded into the progressive wage model? Are they included in that system? That's the first one. And second, in response, just to follow up on that, give us some insight into what local workers that you represent feel about how foreign workers are treated. When you emphasize that foreign workers must be, it's mandatory that they are covered, say, insurance. What do local workers say? Well, now you treat them, sayang them so well. So what are the key messages that need to be understood about that relationship that even is managed by NTUC, that relationship between foreign workers and local workers?
I think on the ground, having been involved in several sectors like the shipbuilding as well as the healthcare, I think they valued the foreign workforce that will help supplement and do things, or basically to supplement their work. Because if you look at much of the work in particular now with the aging population, for example, public healthcare, is quite a strain on resources. So actually the foreign workforce does help supplement in areas and also to ensure that we run 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So from that perspective, yes. If you look at another perspective, whether they are welcoming, yes, I think on the ground, we work side by side, hand in hand. In the shipyards, yes, maybe perhaps someone are semi-skilled or lower skilled workers are many are foreigners, but the foremen, the charge hands who are Singaporeans actually work very closely with them and really live, eat, breathe together with them, in many sense of the word as they go through their work day. And I think the key thing is the progressive wage model. I think you shouldn't ask about PWM. I think the key thing is to ensure many of the low-wage Singaporeans to ensure that they actually not just allow, not to propagate cheap sourcing and to ensure that wages get constantly depressed, is to ensure that there's at least a fair amount of wages to ensure that they can sustain their livelihood. I think that's key.
I'm going to have to bring this to a close, but I think the comment made around, not just about wage and getting the wage level up, I think professionalizing the skills and so on. And I think that's one area that trade associations, we heard from Edwin how his trade association is doing a lot of training and development of people. I think that's certainly a role that trade associations can play to upskill and professionalize some of these skills. So with that, I just want to close the session by asking each one of the panelists to spend maybe 30 seconds to talk about one key message you want to leave for our audience. Janet?
Okay. All right. So keep up the leadership and the visionary leadership, but be discerning different strokes for different folks. Like the gentleman who spoke up, because in our industry, same thing. If we want to have developers and programmers, many of our Singaporean kids don't want to be developers and programmers. They walk out of school, they want to be managers tomorrow. So then you need developers and programmers. So therefore, I think we got to, I'm not suggesting that, because for IT at least, you can still outsource to India or wherever quite appropriately. But nonetheless, if we want to have a maker society, we want to build again, we need to really have people who have that capability. So discerning.
Thank you. Edwin?
I think what I like to see happen here is within this particular industry of sustainable energy, that's renewable energy, energy efficiency, Singapore stands to be in a good position to be a center of excellence for it. It's a huge market around the region. we're talking about in excess of 10 billion. And we are looking at creating more than 18,000 jobs over the next 5 years. So it's something worth doing. We are already leaders in terms of R&D with leaders in solar research. We have leaders in other areas of renewable energy within NTU. And I think this would be one of the industries that Singapore can build on and actually bring a lot of the PMETs from other sectors that are going down, get them trained to get into this sector, because it's a huge market out there.
Thank you. Patrick?
Yeah, my just one-liner will be, the unusual labor movement will be by your side. Yeah, not just to ensure that things are fair to you, but also to care for you and to grow with you.
Thank you, Patrick. Please join me to thank our panelists.